Landing the biggest security contract of my career should have been the perfect night. But at my own celebration, my wife of 17 years treated me like I was invisible while she got handsy with my employee. When I slipped out unnoticed to see if she'd even care, the evidence that landed in my phone an hour later revealed a betrayal that nearly put me in the hospital. Literally. My name is Edwin Thorne. I'm 41 years old, and I own Sentinel Security Services here in Phoenix. Started it from nothing 12 years ago, just me in a beat-up van, doing mall security and small-time gigs. By last fall, we had 32 employees and contracts with half the office buildings downtown. The night everything fell apart, we were celebrating the biggest contract of my career, a 3-year deal with Meridian Financial Tower, worth close to $2 million. I'd rented the rooftop of the Clarendon Hotel, hired a caterer, even got a cake with our company logo. Invited everyone, my crew, clients, family friends, Casey's colleagues from the marketing firm where she worked. I wanted to share this moment with the people who mattered, especially my wife and kids. Bryn, our 16-year-old, was excited about dressing up. Knox, 13, complained about wearing a tie, but showed up anyway. Casey walked in wearing a black dress I'd never seen before, looking stunning as always. But something fell off from the moment she stepped onto that rooftop. She moved through the crowd like she was hunting for something, scanning faces with an intensity that had nothing to do with celebrating my success. I watched her gravitate toward the younger guys from my crew, laughing too loud at their jokes, touching their arms when she spoke. Then Stellan Croft showed up. Stellan was new to the team, maybe 28, one of those smooth-talking guys who looked like he stepped out of a cologne ad. I'd hired him because he was good with clients, professional, knew how to handle himself. What I didn't know was how well he'd handle my wife. The moment Casey spotted him, it was like someone flipped a switch. Suddenly, she had zero interest in congratulating me, zero interest in our friends asking about the business, zero interest in anything except positioning herself in Stellan's orbit. I stood there holding a beer, watching my wife of 17 years act like I didn't exist at my own celebration. "Dad, Mom's being weird," Bryn whispered, sliding up next to me. I wrapped my arm around my daughter's shoulders, forcing a smile. "She's just excited about the party, sweetheart." But Bryn was right. Casey was being weird. She was being someone I didn't recognize, and the worst part was how natural it looked on her. Like she'd been practicing. The next hour was pure torture. I watched Casey work the room like she was campaigning for something, but every conversation led her back to Stellan. She'd laugh at his stories about previous security jobs, touch his shoulder when he made a joke, lean in close when he spoke. Meanwhile, I stood there like a piece of furniture, holding my beer and trying to look like this wasn't slowly killing me inside. My business partner, Jake, pulled me aside near the bar. "Edwin, man, what's going on with Casey tonight? She's acting like you're not even here." Jake had known us since the beginning, watched us struggle through the early years when money was tight and success felt impossible. He'd seen Casey support me through 18-hour days, celebrate every small victory, even help with bookkeeping when we couldn't afford proper staff. "I honestly don't know," I told him, watching my wife demonstrate some kind of self-defense move to Stellan. "She's been different lately. Distant." That was putting it mildly. Over the past few months, Casey had transformed from the woman who used to wait up for me after late security calls into someone who was asleep with her back turned when I got home. Our conversations had become logistical, bills, kids' schedules, household maintenance. When was the last time we'd actually talked about something that mattered? "Dad, can we leave soon?" Knox appeared beside me, tugging at his tie. "This is boring, and Mom won't even look at us." My 13-year-old son had noticed what I'd been trying to deny. Casey hadn't spoken to our kids all evening except to tell Bryn her dress was wrinkled and remind Knox not to spill anything on his shirt. She was too busy being whoever this new version of herself was. I found myself watching her mother, Linda, who was sitting at a corner table looking uncomfortable. Linda had been married to Casey's father for 43 years. Through his drinking, his affairs, his promises to change that never materialized. She taught Casey that men were fundamentally unreliable, that a smart woman always kept one foot out the door. "Edwin, you need to pay attention to this," Jake said quietly, nodding toward where Casey and Stellan had moved to the edge of the rooftop, away from the crowd. They weren't just talking anymore. Stellan had his hand on the small of her back, and Casey was looking up at him like he was telling her the secrets of the universe. This wasn't innocent flirting or a woman enjoying attention at a party. This was something else entirely. That's when I made my first mistake of the evening. Instead of walking over there and reclaiming my wife, I grabbed another beer and tried to convince myself I was overreacting. After all, what kind of man gets jealous at his own success party? The kind who's about to lose everything he thought was secure. By 10:30, I'd had enough. Casey had ignored me the entire night at my own work party, treating me like background noise while she performed for Stellan. Every time someone tried to congratulate me, she'd drift away to wherever he was standing. When they brought out the cake with her company logo, she was on the opposite side of the rooftop, whispering something that made him laugh. I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of making a scene, instead of confronting her in front of everyone, I did something unexpected. I walked over to Jake and quietly told him I was heading out early. Then I found Bryn and Knox. "Hey kids, I'm not feeling great," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Take an Uber home when you're ready. Mom has her car." Bryn looked concerned. "Dad, are you okay?" "Just tired, sweetheart. It's been a long week." I handed her $60. "Make sure your brother gets home safe." I slipped out through the hotel service elevator, the same route I'd use if I was conducting a security sweep. Years of training people to notice exits and blind spots served me well. I was in my truck and pulling out of the parking garage before anyone realized I was gone. My phone stayed silent for exactly 14 minutes. Then it exploded. Casey's name lit up the screen as I sat in my driveway, engine off, staring at our house. The house we'd bought when the business started taking off, the house where we'd raised our kids, the house that suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else. I let it ring. She called again immediately. This time I answered. "Where the hell are you?" Casey's voice was sharp, panicked. Not the sultry tone she'd been using with Stellan all evening. "Home," I said simply. "You left without saying anything. People are asking where you went." "People are asking," I repeated. "Or Stellan is asking." Silence stretched between us like a fault line. "Edwin, what's wrong with you tonight? You're acting paranoid." Paranoid. There it was. The word women use when they're caught and need to make their husbands doubt what they've seen with their own eyes. "I'm acting like a man who watched his wife ignore him completely at his own celebration," I said. "I'm acting like a husband who noticed his wife spent the entire evening focused on another man." "That's ridiculous," Casey snapped. "Stellan is your employee." I was being friendly. Friendly doesn't require standing that close to someone. Friendly doesn't require touching his arm every time you laugh. Another pause. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted to that wounded tone she used when she wanted sympathy. "I can't believe you're making this about me, when tonight was supposed to be about celebrating your success." But it wasn't about my success anymore. It was about watching the woman I'd loved for 17 years become someone I didn't recognize. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. I lay on the couch downstairs, staring at the ceiling and listening to every sound. Casey came home around midnight, her heels clicking across the hardwood floor. She didn't come downstairs to check on me. Around 2 in the morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Ricky, one of my senior guards who'd been at the party. "Boss, thought you should see this." "Sorry." The attached photo made my blood run cold. Casey and Stellan, taken from inside the hotel, probably from someone's phone camera. They were pressed against each other near the rooftop's edge, and it wasn't a friendly conversation. His hand was on her lower back, her face tilted up toward his. They were kissing. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m., more than an hour after I'd left. I saved the photo to 3 different locations, then sat there in my living room, analyzing it like a crime scene. Because that's what it was, really. The scene of a 17-year marriage being murdered. 20 minutes later, another text came in, this time from Marcus, my head of night security. "Edwin, man, I hate to send this, but you need to know. This was right after you left." A short video this time. Casey and Stellan walking toward the hotel elevator together. Her hand was in his back pocket. His arm was around her shoulders. They moved like they'd done this before. I watched it 12 times, memorizing every detail. The way she laughed at something he whispered. The way she pressed closer to him when the elevator doors opened. The way they disappeared inside together. My wife of 17 years. The mother of my children. The woman I'd built a business for, bought a house for, planned a future for. By morning, I had a decision to make. I could pretend I hadn't seen what I'd seen, go back to being the oblivious husband who focused on work while his marriage disintegrated. Or I could do what I'd trained dozens of clients to do when their security was compromised. Protect the assets. Minimize the damage. Control the narrative. I started by changing every password on every account we shared. Banking, utilities, business systems, even a Netflix account. Then I called my lawyer, Mitchell Barnes, and scheduled an emergency meeting for that afternoon. When Casey finally came downstairs around 10, she looked like she'd spent the night celebrating. Her makeup was gone, her dress replaced by yoga pants and an oversized sweater. She moved carefully, like someone with a hangover. "Edwin, we need to talk about last night," she said, pouring herself coffee. "Yes," I agreed, holding on my phone with a photo displayed. "We definitely need to talk." The coffee mug slipped from her hands, shattering against the kitchen floor. But what hit me harder than the broken ceramic was the look on her face. Not surprise, not confusion, relief. Like she was finally tired of pretending. The meeting with Mitchell Barnes went exactly as I'd expected. 30 years of family law had taught him to recognize a man preparing for war, and he didn't waste time with false hope or reconciliation speeches. "Edwin, you've got solid documentation," Mitchell said, reviewing the photos and video on his tablet. "Phoenix is a no-fault divorce state, but this level of evidence can definitely impact asset division and custody arrangements. What about the business?" I asked. That was my biggest concern. Sentinel Security wasn't just my livelihood. It was my legacy, something I planned to pass down Knox someday. "Since you started it before the marriage and it's registered solely in your name, you're in good shape. We'll need to calculate any marital assets that went into expansion, but the core business should remain yours." I'd already moved our joint savings into a separate account, not to hide it, but to prevent Casey from emptying it during whatever emotional breakdown was coming next. I'd seen too many men get blindsided by wives who cleaned out bank accounts the moment divorce papers were filed. That evening, I sat Bryn and Knox down in the living room. Casey was supposedly a book club, but I'd stopped believing her alibis. "Kids, your mother and I are having some serious problems," I said, choosing my words carefully. "I want you to know that whatever happens between us, it's not your fault, and both of us love you." Bryn, my perceptive 16-year-old, wasn't surprised. "Is it because of how Mom acted at your party? You noticed that?" I asked. "Dad, everyone noticed," Knox said. "She was being super weird with that guy from your work. Smart kids. They'd inherited their mother's intelligence, but hopefully not her capacity for deception. I need you both to understand something," I continued. "If things get messy, if people start taking sides or saying things about your mom, remember that she's still your mother. This is between her and me." But privately, I was already preparing for Casey to try using the kids as weapons. It's what people did when they were cornered. They reached for whatever ammunition was available. My phone buzzed with a text from Stellan. The audacity of this guy never ceased to amaze me. "Edwin, can we talk? This whole thing got out of hand." I stared at the message for a full minute before responding. "You're fired. Security will escort you out tomorrow morning. Don't contact me or my family again." His response came immediately. "Man, you don't understand. She came on to me." I screenshotted that text and sent it to Mitchell. Evidence that my wife's lover was already trying to throw her under the bus to save his own skin. These people deserved each other. Casey came home around 10, and for the first time in months, she actually looked at me when she walked through the door. "Edwin, we need to talk," she said. "Yes," I agreed. "We do." Casey sat across from me at the kitchen table, hands folded like she was attending a business meeting. She'd always been good at compartmentalizing, but tonight felt different, more calculated. "I know you're upset about last night," she began, "but I think you're misinterpreting what you saw." Misinterpreting. Another classic deflection technique. "Casey, I have photos of you kissing another man," I said flatly. "What exactly am I misinterpreting?" Her composure flickered for just a moment. "Where did you get photos?" "That's not the point. The point is that my wife of 17 years was making out with my employee in a hotel parking lot while our children were inside wondering where their mother went. It was a mistake," she said, but her tone suggested she was testing different angles, seeing which one might work. "I had too much to drink, and Stellan was being persistent. I should have been stronger, but—" "Stop," I said, holding up my hand. "Just stop. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending this was some drunken mistake. You've been planning this." "Planning what?" "This whole thing. The new clothes, the gym membership, The way you've been pulling away from me and the kids. You've been setting the stage for this affair for months." Casey's mask slipped completely. For a second, I saw the real emotion underneath. Not guilt or remorse, but anger that I'd figured it out. "You have no idea what it's like," she said, her voice rising. "Being married to someone who's never here, who cares more about his business than his family." "I built that business for this family," I replied. "Every 18-hour day, every weekend I worked, every risk I took, it was all for you and the kids." "No, Edwin. It was for you. It was always for you and your ego and your need to prove something to the world." The accusation hit like a physical blow, but I recognized it for what it was: projection. She was describing herself, not me. "So you decided to have an affair," I said. "That was your solution to feeling neglected." "I decided to feel alive again," she shot back. "Do you know what it's like to be invisible in your own marriage? To feel like nothing more than a housekeeper and babysitter. You work full-time, Casey. You've always had your own career, your own interests. I never tried to control that. But you never really saw me either," she said, and for the first time, there was real pain in her voice. "When was the last time you looked at me, really looked at me, and saw a woman instead of just the mother of your children?" The question hung in the air between us, because the truth was, I couldn't remember. Somewhere in the blur of building a business and raising kids and paying mortgages, we'd stopped seeing each other as people and started seeing each other as roles to be filled. But that didn't excuse what she'd done. That didn't make betrayal the logical next step. "So instead of talking to me about it, you decided to find validation from a 28-year-old employee," I said. Casey looked down at her hands. "I never meant for it to go this far." "How far has it gone, Casey?" The silence stretched between us like a fault line, and I realized I didn't really want to know the answer. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Linda, Casey's mother, stood on my doorstep at 8 a.m. with coffee and the look of a woman carrying a heavy burden. "Edwin, we need to talk," she said, settling into our kitchen chair like she belonged there. Linda had always been civil to me, but never warm. She'd raised Casey to be suspicious of men, to always have an exit strategy. But today felt different. "I suppose Casey told you what happened," I said, pouring myself coffee. "She told me her version," Linda replied carefully. "But I've been watching my daughter for 39 years. And I know when she's following a script." That got my attention. "What do you mean?" Linda stared in her coffee cup like she was reading tea leaves. "Edwin, what do you know about Casey's father? He left when she was 12. Heart attack a few years later. Casey doesn't talk about him much." "Casey's father didn't leave because of a heart condition," Linda said quietly. "He left because I finally got tired of covering for his affairs. Multiple affairs. With women he worked with, neighbors, even my sister." The words hit like a punch to the gut. "You never told me this." "I never told anyone. I protected that man's reputation, even after he destroyed our marriage, because I thought it was better for Casey to remember him as a father who got sick instead of a cheater who abandoned his family." "Why are you telling me now?" Linda looked up, and her eyes were filled with old pain. "Because Casey's doing exactly what her father did. The same patterns, the same justifications, even the same type of man. Younger, charming, someone who makes her feel special." I sat back in my chair, processing this revelation. "She's following his playbook, down to the letter. Richard used to tell me I was imagining things, that I was paranoid, that his female friends were just good listeners who understood him better than his wife did." Linda's voice was bitter with memory. "Casey learned from the master." "Does she know you know?" "I called her last night after she left here. Told her I'd seen this movie before and I knew how it ended." Linda leaned forward. "Edwin, I stayed with Richard for 8 years after his first affair because I thought I could change him, thought I could love him enough to make him faithful. All I did was teach Casey that women should accept betrayal as the price of marriage." The implications were staggering. Casey hadn't just chosen to have an affair. She'd been unconsciously recreating her parents' dysfunctional marriage. "What am I supposed to do with this information?" I asked. "Whatever you think is best for those kids," Linda said firmly. "But don't make my mistake. Don't teach Bryn that she should accept infidelity, and don't teach Knox that men are supposed to tolerate disrespect from their wives." As Linda left, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about my marriage anymore. This was about breaking a generational cycle that had already damaged too many people. My phone buzzed with a text from Casey. "Edwin, Please don't involve the lawyers yet. We can work through this. I stared at the message, thinking about Linda's words. Casey was asking for the same thing her mother had given her father, another chance to perfect her deception. I deleted the text without responding. The chest pain started during my meeting with Mitchell Barnes the next afternoon. Sharp, stabbing sensations that made me grip the edge of his desk and gasp for breath. "Edwin, you look pale," Mitchell said, reaching for his phone. "I'm calling an ambulance." "No," I managed, though sweat was beading on my forehead. "Just give me a minute." But the minutes stretched into 5, then 10, and the pain wasn't subsiding. Mitchell ignored my protests and called 911. 3 hours later, I was lying in a hospital bed at Phoenix General while Dr. Sarah Kim explained that my heart was fine, but my blood pressure was dangerously elevated. "Stress can manifest in physical symptoms," Dr. Kim said, adjusting my IV. "Your body is telling you that it can't handle the emotional load you're carrying." "I'm handling it fine," I protested. "Edwin, your blood pressure is 180/110. That's not handling it fine. That's your body screaming for help." Bryn and Knox arrived within an hour, their faces pale with worry. Casey came too, playing the concerned wife perfectly for the medical staff. "Dad, what happened?" Bryn asked, taking my hand. "Just some stress," I said, squeezing her fingers. "I'll be fine." But watching Casey perform for the nurses, seeing her touch my shoulder and speak in that worried wife voice, made my blood pressure monitor beep alarmingly. She was still acting, still playing a role, even here. "Kids, can you get me some iced chips from the nurses' station?" I asked. Once they were gone, Casey dropped the act. "Edwin, this is ridiculous. You're going to make yourself sick over something that can be fixed." "Fixed?" I stared at her. "You had a 3-week affair with my employee, and you think it can be fixed?" "People work through these things all the time," she said. "If you just calm down and think rationally." The monitor started beeping faster. Dr. Kim appeared in the doorway. "Mrs. Thorne, I need you to step outside," she said firmly. "Your husband's vitals are spiking." "I'm his wife," Casey protested. "I should be here." "You should be wherever is best for his health," Dr. Kim replied. "And right now, that's not in this room." After Casey left, Dr. Kim closed the door and sat down beside my bed. "Edwin, I've been doing this for 15 years. I can usually tell when someone's health crisis is related to their personal situation. It's that obvious. Your blood pressure normalizes when you're talking to your children and spikes when your wife enters the room. Your body is telling you something important." She was right. My body was rejecting Casey's presence like a toxin. "How do I fix this?" I asked. "You remove the source of stress," Dr. Kim said simply, "or you learn to manage it in a healthier way. But Edwin, if you don't address whatever is causing this level of physiological distress, you're going to end up back here with something much more serious." That night, alone in the hospital room, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let Casey's choices destroy my health the way they destroyed my marriage. I was 41 years old with 2 kids who needed their father alive and strong. When the nurse came to check my vitals at midnight, my blood pressure had dropped 20 points. I'd finally found something stronger than my stress, my determination to survive this intact. 2 weeks after my hospital stay, Casey made her final play. She showed up in my office with divorce papers already drawn up, but not the kind I expected. These papers gave her primary custody of the kids, half the business, and the house. "Edwin, I've been thinking," she said, settling into the chair across from my desk like she was doing me a favor. "Maybe we should make this easy on everyone." I read through the papers carefully, noting every unreasonable demand. Easy on everyone, or easy on you. The kids need stability. You work too much to be a primary parent, and the business requires travel. This arrangement makes sense. Classic Casey. Even in defeat, she was trying to control the narrative, paint herself as the reasonable one thinking about our children's best interests. "Where's Stellan in all this?" I asked. "Stellan and I are exploring our options," she said carefully. "But this isn't about him. This is about what's best for Bryn and Knox." What was best for Bryn and Knox was not having a cheating mother as their primary influence, but I didn't say that. Instead, I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a manila folder. "Casey, I have something for you to read first." The folder contained everything. Photos of her with Stellan. Screenshots of text messages my private investigator had recovered from her phone. Bank records showing money she'd spent on new clothes and hotel dinners. A timeline of her affair that stretched back 6 weeks, not 3. "You lied about when it started," I said as she flipped through the evidence. "You lied about how far it went. You even lied about who initiated it." Her face went white as she read Stellan's statement to my investigator. How Casey had pursued him, how she told him our marriage was over, how she'd been planning to leave me for months. "Edwin, this is the truth," I interrupted. "And it's going to my lawyer, to the custody evaluator, and to anyone else who needs to understand what kind of mother wants primary custody of 2 teenagers. Casey's composure finally shattered. "You can't do this to me. You can't destroy my life because you're angry." "I'm not destroying your life, Casey. I'm protecting my children from learning that lies and betrayal are acceptable behaviors in relationships. They'll hate you for this," she threatened. "They'll understand when they're older that their father chose truth over convenience." I stood up, ending the meeting. "You have 48 hours to sign Mitchell's custody agreement, or we go to court with all of this evidence." She left my office in tears, but I felt nothing. The woman I'd loved was gone, replaced by someone willing to use our children as weapons in her war against consequences. That evening, I sat Bryn and Knox down and told them the complete truth about their mother's affair, their family history, and what came next. They deserved honesty, even when it hurt. "We're going to be okay," I promised them. "All 3 of us. We're going to build something better." 6 months later, I stood in the driveway of our new house in Scottsdale, watching Bryn help Knox carry boxes from the moving truck. Sentinel Security had expanded to 3 new cities, and I bought a small ranch where the kids could have horses and space to breathe. Casey had signed the custody agreement 2 days before our court date, accepting weekend visitation and supervised time until she completed counseling. Stellan had disappeared from Phoenix entirely after my investigator presented him with evidence of 3 other married women he'd been involved with simultaneously. "Dad, where do you want our office stuff?" Bryn called out, holding a box of business awards. "Second floor, honey. The room with the best view." My health had improved dramatically once the stress was eliminated. Dr. Kim had been right. Removing the source of toxicity had allowed my body to heal itself. I was running again, sleeping through the night, even thinking about dating when the time felt right. The doorbell rang, and I opened it to find Linda standing there with a casserole dish and a nervous smile. "I brought dinner," she said simply. "Thought you might be too tired to cook after moving all day." "Linda, you didn't have to." "Yes, I did," she interrupted. "I failed my daughter, Edwin. I taught her that women should accept betrayal and men should tolerate disrespect. But I won't fail my grandchildren." Over the past months, Linda had become an unexpected ally. She spent time with Bryn and Knox, teaching them about healthy relationships and showing them that love didn't require accepting abuse. "Any word from Casey?" Linda asked as we unpacked the kitchen. "She's in therapy, supposedly. Try to figure out why she sabotaged her own family." I shrugged. "Maybe she'll get there eventually." "And you? Any regrets about how this ended?" I looked out the window at Bryn teaching Knox to ride the horse we bought last week. They were laughing, free from the tension that had filled our old house for months. "I regret that it took me so long to choose my children's well-being over my wife's feelings," I said. "I regret not trusting my instincts sooner." But no regrets about ending it. None at all. That night, after the kids were asleep in their new rooms, I sat on my back porch drinking coffee and planning the future. Sentinel Security was thriving. The kids were adjusting well. I'd even started taking photography classes on weekends, something I'd always wanted to try. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like myself again. Not someone's husband, not someone's meal ticket, just Edwin Thorne, father, businessman, man who'd learned that sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is walk away from what's killing you. The desert stars were bright that night, and the future felt full of possibilities.